Welcome back to our Paul Giamatti actor showreel. And for this segment, we're going to be talking about his newest acclaimed role in The Holdovers. And we're joined today by a very special guest and self-proclaimed Holdovers superfan, Maggie Hill.
Hello, my name is Maggie, also known as at the Maggie Hill online. I make a lot of little videos about TV and film and other storytelling formats. So I've now seen The Holdovers 9 times, I think, is my record.
9. I was
Yes.
about to ask if you've seen it twice or 3 times, but
No.
9, that's quite a lot. Could you get more into that? Like where
Yeah.
the different instances were that you saw it?
Um, I think at least 6 of them were in theaters. I'll be honest, you don't go into watching The Holdovers 9 times thinking that you will. It's not like the goal. It's one of those things where you watch it and you're like, yeah, I could watch that again. And then a friend wants to see it, so you go see it again. And you're like, yeah, I could watch that again. And then somehow you end up watching it 9 times and loving every second of it.
It was like you had friends who wanted to see it, so you're like, okay, great opportunity to revisit a
Yeah,
lovely
I
film.
think the first 2 times were by myself, and every other time was with a different person.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes a lot. And then where were the other times after that? Because it's out
Not
now
in
on digital.
theaters. Yes, I own it on Amazon before they put it on Peacock, and I also don't have Peacock, so I was like, a good thing I own it. And so I've watched it at home and a friend's house a couple of times because she also wanted to watch it twice, so we watched it twice.
Is that a record times you've seen a movie in theaters?
Probably. Yeah, I'd say so. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Probably not the record amount of times I've seen a movie, but in theaters, yes.
Wow, because it'll take a lot for me to even go a second time to the same movie in theaters.
Yeah,
So
I just got Regal Unlimited recently, so anything I like, I'm
that
just like, okay,
explains.
I'll go see it again. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I saw it once when I was in the Toronto International Film Festival
Okay.
and it was absolutely a standout. Like everyone who I was, going to see movies at the festival with ended up putting it very, very high at their ranking.
Yes.
And then when it came out on digital, I think even on Christmas Day, I watched it at home again and showed it to my parents, and they were
Yeah.
really big fans. And basically, in this movie, Paul Giamatti plays a character named Paul, also
Yes.
Paul Hunnam, who is a professor at Barton Academy, which is a private boys' school, and he's tasked with watching over the kids who are holding over, staying over the Christmas break, because he's kind of the most bitter and uptight of the teachers. So
I like to
none of the
say
others really like him.
curmudgeon-y. I like to say curmudgeon-y. That's my favorite.
Curmudgeon. I don't think I've used that.
Yeah.
I've ever heard that word used before.
Curmudgeon? Curmudgeon is like a grumpy old man. And so if you call someone a curmudgeon, it's exactly the vibe of Paul
That's
Hunnam.
fair. Yeah, and then he forms a very unlikely friendship with Angus Tully, played by Dominic Sessa. Just so let's get straight into it. What do we
Yeah.
love so much about this movie?
Oh God. I love the discussion of academic knowledge and experiential knowledge, if that makes sense. Where you can know a lot of things and you can understand a lot of things logically about how the world works. But is the people you live in the world with and the relationships you make and the conversations you have that actually are what make a life lived. And that it's important to have both because it's the historical understanding of where you are, but also the ability to live in that present and build something better than yourself while you're there. And that's why I like it.
Yeah, that's very true, and it's also similar with Paul Giamatti's character in Sideways, because in that, like, all he knows
Mm,
to talk about is wine and
yeah.
stuff, and this one again, he's just like very into his academics, but he's
Yes.
kind of like secluded himself from really trying to form meaningful connections with people his age.
Yeah.
So he has this. He's very savage towards the kids, but he's very melancholy,
Yeah.
which is revealed, and I think he's so wonderful in delivering like this. What was the word? Hermit
Curmudgeon-y?
Hermogeny guy. That's also
Yeah.
just kind of a lovable soul who
Yeah.
needs a little more love.
Love to know him, hate for him to be my teacher.
Perfect,
I,
perfect. Yeah.
yeah. There was the one line he says at the beginning where he's like, but of course that it'll be an average of the 2 grades for your final instead of just a full retake. That I think every time I saw it, my friend and I would just go, ugh, no. Horrible. but saying like we can't let their money make them smart when they're not. Which I think is true, but he goes about it in a real harsh way.
Yeah, I think he goes about his ways because he has this resentment towards the fact that like yeah they could just get through life without learning anything
Yeah.
just by having rich parents.
Yeah, because I mean, if we spoiler alert, but that's exactly what happened to him at Harvard.
From here on, spoiler alert, but
Oh yeah,
let's
sorry.
talk. All good. From here on, spoilers. Let's talk a bit about the script in this movie. First of all, I love just the rhythm of the dialogue, like all these words that Paul Giamatti comes up with. You can tell that he's very much like a history teacher that likes to
Yeah.
use old-fashioned words.
Well, that's also such a lens that he views the world through, right? Where he's like, I think I went to an event online with the Writers Guild where they did like a talk through the script with the writer. And he was saying that Paul very much sees himself as that sort of tragic Roman hero, right? Like to him, he is living through the Punic campaign. He is living through this stuff. It's just at his emotional level. So the way that he is reacting to the things around him is through that lens of a tragic Roman hero with this sort of information of the past and present all encircling each other inside his brain. And they get kind of crossed.
Talk about a movie that equally balances being a brilliant comedy and a brilliant drama.
Oh,
There's so
yeah.
many laugh out loud moments. Um, with a full screening, you had so many like hysterical moments in this movie. But then when the characters are actually, well, at first forced to spend time with each other, but eventually they manage to bond. There's a lot of great drama, um, and I think definitely Angus comes out. Sorry, he comes into the movie with that same sort of like resentment towards everything
Yeah.
around him, and then you kind of understand that he just needs a little love too.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever related to a character the way I relate to Angus Tully.
Wow, expand
I
on
was like,
that.
that's me. I saw he did
Literally
his
me.
stupid little speech at the beginning where he tries to get him to let them out of class early. And I fully did that shit in school. I was the kid in the back of the class with the one good grade being like, sir, actually. And I never related to anyone more.
So it was like a fun literally me or like a cringe literally me.
Both. I think because he needs to learn in that movie. That's what makes a character good. And so I think it's fun to be able to see pieces of yourself that you're like, whoa, okay, we need to take a step back, but then ultimately learn that lesson alongside them.
And I think that's why Paul really gravitates towards him because he's like, hey, I'm alone and maybe I don't always want to be that, but I'll never admit that ever because I'm kind of comfortable.
Yeah.
I'd say like the first 50 or so minutes, he's just very pissed off at him. And then eventually he's like, okay, I got to take care of him.
Well, and I find that so much of it is because he sees his own flaws in this kid, which I mean, like me talking about Angus a second ago, it's hard to look at this person and be like, oh, I know exactly why you're doing, but because it's a reflection of me, it's annoying. Like, why are you being me back at me? That's rude. So there's an immediate sort of like defensive anger to that and a defensive annoyance to that. And it's, you have to annoy the other person enough that they put down their boundaries. And I think the first moment that really happens is when Angus lies for him at the doctor's office. Because there's 3 lies in the movie. This is something the writer talked about. You have that lie, you have the Harvard lie, and then you have the lie at the very end that Paul says. And so rule of threes in writing, woo woo. But also it's such a good progression of like what they do for each other.
Definitely how far they come for each other throughout is really sweet. And then, of course, there's one other person who's staying with them the whole holiday, and that's the character of Mary Lamb, who's played by Davine Joy Randolph.
Who, if she does not win that Oscar, I will riot.
Yeah,
I will riot.
She has her own arc and her own story that's very much put forward and not defined by the other 2 characters. But she's also there as the voice of reason, even though she's gone through like the worst thing imaginable. She has those funny moments too, but it's really like I think the patience in her performance that's really brilliant. Like she's going through the hardest holiday season she's ever been through and still trying to be a caregiver of some sort.
Mm. I think too, she's so unabashed about her grieving, where she's afraid to heal, but she's not afraid to grieve. And she's very herself, no matter what. There are moments where Paul looks to her for help and she's like, you did it. You fix it. Or like a tough love kind of like, hey, I got my own shit. Like, love to help you, love you guys, here for you. At the same time, like, I'm here for you as my own person and not just as the woman who's going to help you out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which I was very worried about her falling into at the beginning. I was like, oh, is this going to be like the mama situation? But I was like, no,
Right.
like this is a woman going through her own pain, living her own struggle, and finding her own version of healing in this story. And it is not solely dependent on the men in the movie, which I loved. It is entirely her own choice and entirely her own journey.
We see Paul Hunnam in the beginning. He's a dick to everyone for the first act. But he's always very respectful too. Like he's complimenting her cooking,
and she's like genuine. Yeah,
he's like super chill with her all the time. But
I think it's a thing of he is respectful to people he feel has deserve his respect. Like yeah, she is a great worker. She is kind. She does what she is living as a full person who demands that respect and that authority, and so he gives it. Because he's like, yeah, you're another adult. Here we are, all these kids, Yeah,
because everyone else in that world is like, we at Barton, we honor our founders, our academic values and all that. And he knows that all these people are BS. She's actually, fought for a life and so on. And that's a very good point, that he knows that she's earned that respect from him. But yeah, she has so many just fantastic moments that as soon as I saw this movie back in September, I was like, she's at least getting nominated.
Oh yeah. There's a single shot of her at the party where the music is playing and her eyes follow the music. She goes through 3 different memories. The memories turn sour. She starts to cry. She looks up and sees Danny, the caretaker, and goes, get me another drink. It is like a 10-second close, push in. And it is some of the most beautiful work I saw all of last year. Was that 10 seconds?
Yeah, and it's, I think anyone who watched a lot of movies this year, A, saw this one, B, said that this was one of the best performances of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's such a big part of the story, even though she also has her very own story within the film.
Yeah, and I think too with her son, something I think about a lot with this movie is that none of it happens without Vietnam. Because Vietnam, funnily enough, in American history is something they don't like to teach you, right? They skip over it. They're like, yeah, a bunch of people died. Oh no, see you later. Because they don't want to talk about how culpable they were in the massacre of the working class at the time. And so you have that whole scene where they're coming out of the diner and Paul is like, Barton boys don't go to Vietnam except for Curtis
Lamb. I was about to say that. Yeah. And in Paul's delivery of that line, except for Curtis Lamb, you can hear the immense respect he has.
And the anger. That this kid, of all kids, this wonderful, hardworking, smart kid, was sent because of money. And in the same way, you wouldn't have Angus's conflict, because Angus is like, if you talk about, okay, what happens if Angus wins? What happens if he loses? His loss is death, because he gets sent to military school, then gets sent to Vietnam, then dies. And Paul's entire viewpoint of the world, every monologue he gives about the world being on fire, no one giving a shit about the poor kids, is because of Vietnam. So every single character's central conflict in this movie hinges on that war and what it did to the working class of America.
That's powerful. And I think it also goes to one of our other themes of what are these Barton boys really being taught, if not about the realities of what's actually going on in our country, if they just kind of get to live in their own world. Yeah.
Well, no one in America is taught about what's going on in America. You get up to World War II and they stop. And they're like, and we're good.
And MLK had a dream.
Yeah, and that's all you get.
Yeah, exactly.
So I
But
love this movie helped a lot of times when I saw it with friends, it started a conversation and we got to have like a whole discussion about it and like our perspectives on what history has been taught to us and what we've learned and what we believe. And like, I think that's a really interesting starting point, is such like a human movie to enter into what should be understood as a human conflict.
another thing that really contributes to the mood of the film is the 70s style editing of it. Like Alexander Payne is so unapologetic about him wanting this to feel like a 70s movie.
Yeah.
I also just think it's his best directed movie I've seen,
Oh,
because I've
the
seen.
blocking in this fucking movie is incredible. You will have a single take with like 7 different visual blocking images between actors that give you the emotional stakes, understanding, and relationship without a single word, like 7 times in one take. It's crazy. The liquor store scene, that's all a
Yeah,
one
that
shot.
always comes to mind when I'm thinking about their
Um
relationship.
but it pits them across from each other at the top here. Angus is trying to push a little more, so he walks around and follows. Paul turns away because he's emotionally turning away and physically turning away. He goes and searches off screen. Angus follows. He's pulled back in by Angus, makes another retreat. Like, it's a whole choreography to their emotional relationship in a single scene, and it's incredible.
That's, I think, the most open he is to Angus in
Mm,
maybe the whole movie, because he's obviously telling something that he's embarrassed to tell and hasn't told
yeah,
anyone in years. And he's telling it to the person he thought he would never be spilling the beans to. And he's
yeah.
like, I hit him. Like, I just, I love Paul's delivery in this movie, and just their chemistry, their partnership.
Oh my
Um,
God, yeah.
but again, like the direction, the production value throughout the movie.
I think
And
it's crazy that that's like 7 different schools.
oh, they filmed it in 7 different schools?
Yeah,
That's
around. It was a bunch of
crazy.
different schools in Massachusetts. I think so. One was the school that Dominic Sessa went to when they cast him. And then another one of them was actually Paul Giamatti's high school rivals.
That's funny. He must have meant it then, if they filmed that where he was spitting the
Yeah.
liquor. He must have
He
meant
was
it. I think the ending is such a touching scene,
oh, I
because it's
love it.
like, like you said, it's Paul lying for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
Um, he's realizing, like you said, maybe experiential wisdom is what he needs
Mhm.
now, and that doing this for a kid that he genuinely believes in and sees a lot of himself
Yeah.
in is the best thing that could come out of his career, even if it ends his career at Barton.
Because he's saving himself. He's saving the kid that he would have been, and he is, one, genuinely saving his life and also saving Mary from having to go through that again, of another person that she's opened her heart to being sent to the same place. It wouldn't be a happy ending if Paul had stayed at Barton, because he needed to leave. He needed to be more than Barton.
Yeah, because he was just gonna go through that again if he had
Yeah.
stayed. All you kids suck, etc., etc. Like, he wasn't gonna do anything that the teachers would randomly be like, "Oh wow, Paul, you're not so bad
Yeah.
after all." Like,
Well, it's also all the other teachers sucked, dude. Like, it's not a group of people. All the values that he fought for no longer reside there to him in his mind, right? Because he has that asshole as a headmaster who doesn't really care about the kids and cares about the money and his spot and his fancy bourbon. And he needed to be like, I've dreamed about seeing these places and these things for so long. Let me not only give younger me, Angus, the ability to continue pursuing his smarts and his dreams, but let me finally go and pursue mine.
absolutely. And of course, we have to end it with some sort of savagery, because it's an Alexander Payne movie. So
It's a bit of
he
a
drinks
fuck
the
you. You
cognac and
gotta
he
give,
spits it
yeah,
on the.
you gotta give a fuck you to the headmaster. One last one.
With that, let's get into some Oscar chances.
Yes.
The Holdovers is nominated 5 times for
Yeah.
Best Picture, Best Actor, Supporting Actress, Film Editing, and Original Screenplay. Let's talk about the easiest one, Supporting Actress. It's looking
Yes.
really good. It's
If
looking
she
really good.
loses, I will be so upset.
Yeah, that would be pretty sad. It seems like everyone's sort of in agreement, like, yeah, she's the best one. Plus,
Yeah.
I think the moment she won the Golden Globe and the Critics' Choice, I just think this is the easiest acting one to predict this year. I think
It
each year
is,
at least there's a
I'm going to
lock.
be so honest with you, the only one I care about.
Yeah.
I do not care about the Oscars. I care about Davine Randolph, Joy Randolph winning that Oscar.
Yeah. I mean, it's likely going to be one of the big moments and a very well deserved one. Like I'm
Yeah.
excited to see her win. I'm excited to see her speech. Like it's honestly looking like a good 99.9% that she's going to win because it doesn't seem like
Yes.
there's anyone who's really giving her a run for that gold right now.
Mm-hmm.
On that subject, I do think Alexander Payne should have been nominated for directing,
I do as
which
well.
is interesting because he's been nominated 3 times for directing.
Interesting.
Like even when some of his movies got less nominations, he was still nominated for Sideways, for
Huh.
Nebraska, for The Descendants,
Yeah.
um, and he's won twice for writing, never for directing. But
Okay.
considering this is like everyone thinks this is one of his best, it's interesting that
Mm-hmm.
he missed out on this one. Um,
Intéressant.
yeah. Original screenplay, I think it has a shot at winning, but
Yeah.
I think it's like split 3 ways now between this and Past
Mm.
Lives and Anatomy of a Fall.
Oh, also very good. I don't know. I think it'd be cool if he won David, last name I can't remember, because yes, he was a TV writer. So this is his first feature that's been produced. And I love TV writers, if you didn't know from my content. So I'm really always excited when someone like makes that jump and succeeds.
And then last but not least, Best Actor. Paul
My
Giamatti
boy.
has so far taken home the Golden Globe and the Critics' Choice.
Yes.
So he won the Golden Globe for comedy.
Yeah.
Killian Murphy won for drama. So it looks like they're
Yeah.
sort of pitted up against each other now. I think
Mm-hmm.
Giamatti has the edge for me because
Yeah.
um, I love Killian Murphy and Oppenheimer, but I think it would be lovely if Giamatti won, just because he's such a terrific character actor as we've talked about in
Yeah.
this whole episode, and I think honestly the voters might be waiting to give him his due. He's been working
Oh,
so
I
long and
hope
he's done so
so.
many films that people love. I think
I
this would be a great moment.
also, just as a person, listening to his podcast and interviews, like the way he thinks about acting and is kind toward craft and apparently delightful to work with and so thoughtful and naturalistic in this role. I just want him to win, and I want to see that little smile on his face, and I want to post it on my little Instagram story, and that's how I want my night to go.
In his Golden Globe speech, he was like, "I want to shout out my son who just finished college," and I was like, "Hey, just
Yeah,
finished college."
me too.
So,
Woo!
hey, awesome. Because a lot of the time is like they're giving really heavy dramatic transformations to
Hmm.
roles. This one is a very much a mix between comedic and dramatic. I think it would be
Yeah.
slightly different from the ones that have won Best Actor recently, but I don't think
Hmm.
it's any less deserving.
Oh
Just
yeah.
because he's giving it his all. Again, I think he's built up such a rapport, and so many of his colleagues admire his work. I'm
Hmm.
sure, and doesn't seem like Bradley Cooper is taking this one home, even though he's been nominated a dozen times because he hasn't won any of the past ones. But look, we'll have to wait to
If
see
he
what the
wins for
SAG.
Maestro,
That'd be interesting. It looked like it for a second. I don't know, but
we'll see.
yeah, I think with the current wins, Giamatti is now in the front runner spot.
Hell
So
yeah.
I'm waiting to see what
Let the
happens
man
with the SAG
win.
Awards, but I'm gonna echo that and say let the man win. I just think it's gonna be
Yeah.
a fun win and a deserving one, and
Yeah.
just love the guy. Rooting for him right now.
What a man. What a man. Let him win.
I think it's also the movie this year that I can just recommend to everyone with pride. Like, if you don't like
Yeah.
violent movies, maybe you don't watch Killers of the Flower Moon or something. But
Hmm.
this is just a movie that's A, warm, B, funny, C, emotional and intelligent.
Yeah.
Like, I could recommend this. A, I watched it with my parents, or to my grandparents. I have
Hmm.
friends who have seen it and loved it who aren't
Yeah.
even that into movies. So just a easily watchable and accessible one that everyone can find something in.
Watch The Holdovers. That's my only closing thought, is that if you haven't watched it at this point in your life, what are you doing? Turn it on right now. Free trial. Peacock. Let's go.
Maggie, where can people find you? Give us some of those plugs.
Yeah. You can find me at the Maggie Hill on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm posting on YouTube more soon, hopefully, so that'll be exciting. But most of my content is on Instagram and TikTok at the moment.
Okay, awesome. So check out Maggie's videos about film and TV, etc., and look forward to that. Anything else that you'd like to say about that you're doing in the world of
Goodness.
acting and so on?
Not at the moment. I just finished a play, so I'm blank slate over here.
Amazing, amazing. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, and thank you so much to our viewers for watching our Paul
Absolutely.
Giamatti actor showreel and tuning in about the history of a great actor.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Of course, have a great one, and see you guys soon.